On behalf of Space Education and Research Foundation, and on my personal behalf, I am very happy to welcome Professor Harish Pad. Professor Harish Pad and all the participants who are taking part in this webinar. And as you know, that today's talk is the first talk of this webinar on space biology. It will have 4 talks, 2 of which will be given by Professor Pad, and the other 2 will be given by Dr. Divya Vats. And today's first talk is life in the universe, or exobiology. That is the topic that Professor Harish Pad will be dealing and presenting us today. Before I hand over the mic to Professor Harish Pad, I will say a few words about him as an introduction to you. Professor Harish Pad had a very excellent academic career. He did PhD in biochemistry from University of Delhi in 1978, and the same year he went to United States, and there he had an excellent academic career for about 17 years. In 1996, he returned to India and joined as a professor of biochemistry in the MS University, Baroda in Gujarat. And after 3 years in 1999, he joined as a director of Pharmaceutical Education Research and Development Center, which is also at Ahmedabad. And there, beside doing excellent research work, he also started a new project called NIPER, which is a very big project of Government of India, and he was project director of that project. In 2010, he joined as a vice chancellor for Sardar Patel University in Vidyanagar, Gujarat, and there he served the university as VC for 2 terms. His research interests are cell and molecular biology applied to health and pharmaceutical sciences. He has more than 200 research publications in very international journals of high reputation, and many of his research papers have been cited several times. He has a citation number 6,000, more than 6,500 citations to his credit. And nowadays, the research impact factors are also calculated by several factors. The cumulative impact factor of his research output is 300, and H index is 40, and there is a I-10 index, which is 90. So that way, he has a very excellent research work, beside being a very much interested in education in India, and particularly in Gujarat. He's also served as member of several editorial boards and societies, scientific societies. He is member of IBS committees of pharmaceutical companies. He advises them. With these few words, now I request Professor Harish Pad to start talk. Professor Harish Pad, please. And now I will switch off my mic and my video so that he only remains.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Vats. And friends, welcome to this first seminar on the subject of space biology. Greetings from Ahmedabad. This is Harish Pad. And what I intend to do in today is to discuss about the life present in the other than Earth. Now, before I start on the topic, I would like to mention that I will not try to be exhaustive in my discussion. Rather, I would discuss the broader principles of what life is on this earth, how it evolved, and when we are looking for life elsewhere, what we should be looking at, what kind of life we should be expecting, what is our approach, and which are the likely places where we may be able to find the life. Now, before I talk on the actual subjects, I would like to take a minute or so to discuss how our knowledge base has expanded. And this question of whether we are alone on this earth or there is a life in the universe elsewhere has been an intriguing question right from the beginning. And this curiosity to see where else the life may be present has been intriguing mankind for over several thousands of years. Now, human being, as we know on this earth, is about 1,000,000-year-old species. And in this million years, I consider two major achievements of mankind. One, we have learned to live in large community, even a community of nations. And that perhaps is the oldest, and that grain was there in human even when we evolved from our predecessors. But the second most important achievement of a mankind is that in last couple of 100 years, we have developed a science which is nothing but a evidence-based rational thinking. Thinking, understanding, observations were part of mankind from the beginning, but addition of science has changed our rules for the ball game of developing knowledge, understanding, and integrating all this knowledge for the benefit of a mankind. So curiosity has led to development of enormous knowledge. Even before science, people were curious and they have developed a knowledge base, but that knowledge was based on was limited by our whatever we can perceive through our sensory system. So we believed what we could see, we believed what we could hear, but we were unaware about the many other things that we were not able to hear and we were not able to see, for which we have developed a variety of instrumentation to enlarge the spectrum of our perception. So these two things, the scientific way of thinking and aided by a number of instrumentations, we have gained enormous knowledge in last couple of 100 years. And this enormous knowledge has really expanded our knowledge base. And as you can see, that our knowledge has is everything about human dimension, and that includes what we are, what our universe is, ourselves, and everything about our activity. So as the knowledge expanded, unfortunately, it led to fragmentation and compartmentalization. And we started compartments, something we called science, something called business, something we call humanities or arts. Unfortunately, that integration is a price that we paid, and our knowledge base, particularly our education system, it does not integrate this to the level that is required in the time to come. With just a small example of the kind of problems that our society will face, As you can see on this graph, on the x-axis there is a pollution indices, particle size, particle numbers, as well as ozone level. And this study was recently done that as we increase the particle size or the ozone level, we can see that the crime level, violent crimes in the United States have increased. So this is the example of how the science or environmental science is connected with the sociology and the criminology. And this kind of topics, unfortunately, our education system is not tuned to, does not prepare our students for. So the knowledge base in the future is really interdepartmental, as you can see on this slide, that everything, economics, sociology, biology, medicine, ecology, history, everything is so integrated. And perhaps our education system should take a note of it. I just want to point out that the space biology is one such interdisciplinary subject that has come into more limelight in last 20 years or so. So the next slide shows that space biology has two major components. One is that is there other life elsewhere in the universe, what used to be called exobiology. And the other is what happens when a life from Earth is taken into space or onto the other planets. What happens to the life in the sense that the plants, animals, human, which have developed under certain circumstances on the Earth, when they are transplanted in the space for a longer period of time and or onto the other planets, what happens to the physiology, biochemistry, and cell structure, genetics of the living system in the space. So the second part of the effect of space conditions on life we will deal with in my second lecture, actually third in the series, that will be on 23rd. So today we will elaborate on what is life, how it evolved, and whether we should hope to find our cousins in the other planets or in the other solar system. And that is the point that we will be discussing today. So astrobiology, it addresses three fundamental questions. How does life begin and evolve? We have the example from Earth, and we will dwell on this. Second is there a life beyond Earth, elsewhere? And if it is, how can we detect the same? And the third is that in light of all this, what is the future of life on Earth and in the universe? I think this third question is more hypothetical, and we will not go into it, but it prepares us to think what is the future on this one. So the astrobiology, formerly known as exobiology, is an interdisciplinary scientific field concerned with the origin, early evolution, distribution, and future of life in the universe. Astrobiology considers the question of whether extraterrestrial life exists, and if it does, how human can detect it. How can we come in contact with the life elsewhere? I'm sure most of you would know about the International Space Station, which is responsible for not only space biology, but many aspects of space has been enhanced by permanently placing an International Space Station in the Earth's orbit. and there is a continuous communication as well as exchange of astronauts, materials, and even the experiments from Earth to the space station and back. Now, this Earth station is an excellent example of a collaboration of 5 space agencies: NASA of USA, Roscosmos from Russia, this is from Japan, this is the European Space Agency, and Canadian Space Agency. These 5 countries, the agencies of these 5 countries, have collectively launched this International Space Station. It is essentially an assembly because you cannot put it in one go. Now it is in the orbit of about 254 miles, that's roughly 400 kilometers above the Earth. It goes around the orbit with about 4.7 miles per second. That's very high speed. And it is roughly like a football field, 50 meters by 110 meters. So it's a very huge complex. Weighs about 420,000 kilogram, and that's the weight. That approximately equals to about 320 cars. This space station has been very instrumental in enhancing our activities in the space sciences, including space biology. And this can be seen with the naked eye just before sunrise or just after sunset, when it is dark on the Earth, but the light still reaches the space station, and we can see it as a bright object moving relatively rapidly through the sky. Now, coming to Earth, origin of Earth and origin of life on Earth. As we know and as we believe that a Big Bang happened about 13.8 billion years back, and out of that, our Earth originated about 4.5 billion years back into our solar system. And the first life appeared on the Earth about 3.5 billion years ago. So about 1 billion years, Earth was by itself without life. Now it is interesting what led to the origination of life on this Earth, and whether similar reactions are possible in the other on the other planets. Briefly, this is the lifespan of the Earth. These are the numbers in billions of years. And after the formation of Earth, about 1 billion years back, the first living cell appeared. Then some photosynthetic reactions developed in some bacteria, because of which, as you can see, the oxygen level, which was almost none in the atmosphere, rose to about 20% now. And most of that expansion of life on the Earth is attributed to the rise in oxygen level in the last 1.5 billion years. And as you can see, first multicellular plants have developed here, vertebrate developed here, and as I said, Homo sapiens, that is humans, developed about 1 million years ago. Now, this is slightly unrelated, but it's a very interesting question, that if it was Big Bang, we started everything, then who initiated the Big Bang? If you read this interesting book, the last book of Stephen Hawking, he raises a question in the discussion that whether you need a creator to start the Big Bang, or whether you need a creator to maintain the universe as it is now. And I'll just share the conclusion that he concludes that there is no need for the creator. The conditions and the laws of physics can explain this in the absence of them. He does not rule out the presence of God, but he suggests that the Big Bang can be explained based on the science that as we know it. So what we will discuss in the next half an hour or so is, are we alone in the universe? Few questions have been so intriguing. Then are we alone in the universe? The search for alien life has captured our imaginations for thousands of years, and we can see that many Hollywood and Bollywood movies have played on this theme. And particularly this year, 2019, almost 25 years after the discovery of a planet orbiting a star that is not the sun. So that is other solar system, not our solar system. And astronomers are very close to find whether there could be a life or not. So this year has been particularly interesting in space biology, and we'll come to that later on. There are many planets which we can call them Earth-like planets, and Earth-like planets in the sense that the temperature in the range that we are familiar with, and there is a water and there is a rocky terrain, and these are all the conditions that we know that led to development of life on the Earth. And still, when we are looking for the Earth-like planets, we have no evidence yet of the life outside the Earth. So that raises the question: is life common, or it is very special? It is a very rare event. If life is common in the universe, that means Earth is not a special. But if it just so happens that Earth is a special, and for some circumstances, the life originated and developed to this level. Now, remember, we are not looking for just a living system. We are looking for an intelligent living system which can communicate with the other universe as well. So, is there any other place where there is an intelligent life, or the Earth is so special that we happen to be alone in this universe? When we discuss that the life has evolved and developed on the Earth, we should know what are the conditions on Earth and which are not present, which may not be present or may be variable in the space or in other planets. For example, gravity. We know that when we go into space, the gravity reduces, and what we use the term microgravity, considerably reduced. And we must keep in mind that many of the human physiological conditions are dependent on the gravity that we see on Earth. Radiations. We have been fortunate to be protected from the heavy radiations because of the Earth air layer, and temperature also is very maybe very extreme outside the Earth environment. Air may or may not be there and may be very thin. The air composition may be different in other places, and the pressure of the air is also an important determinant in the physiological development of life on the Earth. Something that we forget and we may not pay too much attention is the magnetic field of the Earth, and that might have influenced some aspects of life, along with the day and night circadian rhythm and the seasons. So in short, the life on Earth is influenced by all of these factors. These factors may or may not be there, or may be at a different level. Although all of these factors may not be required for life to develop elsewhere, but that tells us that when we look for life elsewhere, it may not be like the life that we are used to on this earth. Now, life, a living organism, is in disequilibrium with the environment. It can replicate itself. It can undergo evolution, the Darwin's principle that you know. And the life on Earth uses photosynthesis to trap the solar energy and respiration in utilizing that energy to do all the functions that the life requires to do. How did the life originate? In other words, this is a non-living to a living cell, and for that transition to occur, the system should be self-replicating. It should have a catalytic ability to produce energy, just like what our enzymes do. It should have a source of energy and a mechanism to use the energy. Water is a medium of life, and it should be contained in a memory. So these all requirements for the first cell to develop are intriguing, because we cannot imagine how life could have originated from the non-living environment. I'm reminded of this very old experiment in which the scientists tried to replicate the conditions prevalent, the gases prevalent in the early phase of life, early phase of Earth, and provided electrical sparks and tried to analyze what kind of compounds are generated when water vapor, methane, carbon dioxide, ammonia, hydrogen, nitrogen, etc. Are mixed and subjected to the electrical sparking. And what they found was that the building blocks of life, that is amino acids and nitrogenous base, were generated in this simulation of the early environment on Earth. So it says that the compounds which are used by the living system could have been generated in the primordial circumstances on the Earth. The other attributes of life is that there are certain elements present in the Earth's crust, but the same elements are not in the same amount present in the living system. If you compare human body with the Earth's crust, you can see that human body has a lot of hydrogen, carbon, and oxygen, while the Earth's crust has more of a oxygen and calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, but very little of hydrogen and carbon, as we can see here. So there is an enrichment of certain elements by living system compared to the Earth's crust. And once again, I'm reminded of the factors which are required, and the water is an important factor that we have to keep in mind. Now, we were discussing Earth-like planets. There are so many things in our solar system, like dwarf planets, moon, asteroids, comets, etc., etc. But it has been estimated that there are so many galaxies. Every galaxy has so many planets, and some of them may be like Jupiter or Saturn, or some may be like Earth. And potential of life can be looked for in what they call Earth-like planets. Now, what is the probability of finding an intelligent life elsewhere? That probability you can calculate, provided you know how many planets, what fraction of them could be Earth-like with the right kind of conditions, what fraction of the planets where life could have developed fraction of the living species that develop intelligence, because life itself may be there, but it may not have evolved to the level that we see it on the Earth. And the fraction of intelligent species with ability to communicate. So there are a lot of probability calculations, and depending upon how optimist or pessimist you are, you can put numbers to all these probabilities. And if you are a pessimist, you will think that the probability of finding a intelligent life, communicative life is very low, 10 raised to minus 5. But if you are optimistic, these fractions are more optimistic, and you may have several million places on the universe with an intelligent life which can come. Now, where we are, we don't know, but our pursuit continues. Now, some people have argued that we should not be looking for Earth-like planets or habitability index. We should look for biosignatures. And biosignatures are indications that the life might be there, which has changed some of the signatures in the environment. For example, if you have to think about biosignatures on the Earth, we can think about oxygen, which was not there before life came, but oxygen has developed. And similarly, many compounds, if we can detect it elsewhere, even if we don't see the life, those compounds are a signature that life could have been there in the past. Now, when we look for life, what do we look for? We are biased by the life that we have experienced on this earth. Life similar to our own, the availability of liquid water, complex compounds made from carbon. Life could be built from different elements as well. And one closer relative of carbon is the silicon. And people have argued that life elsewhere need not be carbon based, it could be silicon based. And silicon has the right chemical properties which makes it possible to be used by a living system. As you can see, it's very just below the carbon and has a 4 valencies, and it can react like carbon, but it is much more stable. So where there are extreme conditions, silicon bonds are much more stable, and life there could have used silicon as its fundamental elements, like carbon that we have used on this earth. In our earth itself, there are extreme environments, the environments which are normally not conducive for supporting life. But some of the life forms have very nicely adjusted to such extreme environment. What normally happens that when you raise the temperature, the proteins denature, and these denatured proteins become non-functional. They lose their catalytical structural functions, and they are no longer active. However, there are organisms which have adapted to such extreme conditions of temperature, pressures, and many other different environments, and they have developed a genetic diversity as well as a metabolic diversity. And we call them extremophiles because they are tuned to the extreme conditions in the environment. And such habitats are plenty on the earth itself. For example, such extremophiles may be tolerant to temperature, very high pressure. Imagine a living organism at 10 kilometers under the sea level. So such a huge pressure of the water, but the organisms do survive and prosper. So the pressure, salinity, we know that there are many plants and organisms, animals that live in the sea. There are pH tolerant organisms. They are very organisms which can live without a water, and organisms which are resistant to high radiations. So we have found such extremophiles on the Earth itself, and there are few more examples of what we call extreme habitats, and acidophiles, lower pH, higher pH, no oxygen, anaerobic, organism living within the rock or at high salinity, at high hydrostatic pressure, cold temperature, hot temperature, and limited water. And this is an example of extreme habitat, the hydrothermal vents under the deep sea level. So you can see that the life is not always that tender, and life can adjust to a very different habitat, and we have an example of this. So when we look for life elsewhere, we should not be biased for looking for life of our own type, because on Earth also we have seen that life have adapted to a very severe extreme conditions. One more limitations of looking for life in the universe is our ability to travel. As you can see here, this is the Earth and this is our moon. And we have traveled as far as about 400,000 kilometers to the moon, on the other side of the moon. Our neighbor like Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn are still many-fold, much more further than the moon. And it takes a long time. For example, if we want to send a spacecraft to Mars, it takes approximately 6 months one way. So we are very limited in going into beyond the solar system and exploring the solar system for any living system. So we have to rely on the indirect methods, and the examples of indirect methods are this one, that we look for signals from our search for extraterrestrial intelligence using radio telescopes for the discovery of intelligent life, the system of unknown biology or chemistry, which may be many light years away, but still existing. So this approach requires that the life has to be intelligent, and even if it is many light years away, but it has, no matter what chemistry it has, but it has to be intelligent enough to be communicated with us. And there are other approaches that we within in the extrasolar system, telescopes within galaxy, other solar system, and information on the atmosphere. Sometimes the information about the atmosphere suggests us the probability of life existing there. So we have missions that we send out, manned or unmanned, but our ability to send manned mission has been limited. We have samples of meteorites that fall on the Earth, and analysis of that is an indication. For example, if there are possible fossils, that tells us that there might have been life on elsewhere. And sometimes we recreate, like the experiment I showed you earlier, that cosmochemistry type of experiments, that if we can mix suppose we know that this is the atmosphere in a particular planet, we can do in vitro simulation, and that simulation may generate and may suggest us that the probability of life may still be there. Within our solar system, This is Earth, and on our outside orbit is Mars, and next to Mars is Jupiter and Saturn, and then there are other planets. On the inside of this, towards the sun, there are planets, but they are not likely to be, or at least there are not indication that they are habitable. Our current knowledge tells us that Mars is the prime candidate within our solar system, and one moon of the Jupiter and one moon of the Saturn are likely candidates for having life in this universe. It has not been detected or confirmed, but the conditions are conducive for development of life in this planet, on this particular places. So Mars, as I said, our neighbor, our planet next to us, Europa, which is the moon of Jupiter, there is a probability of having life because habitability index is quite comfortable, and so is the moon of Saturn, which is Titan. And as I will show you evidence that there are good indications that these three places may have a life either now or in the past in these three places. So Mars, you can see the terrain is very rocky terrain, just like us. But along with rocky terrains, this is what we have learned about Mars over a period of time. Various missions, our strategy has worked in developing understanding about Mars and its environment over a period of time. So various missions which have been sent to Mars, and more indications are that there is a water found, small and at large scales, and these conditions are suggestive of a right environment for the life to develop. Doesn't mean life is there, but it suggests that it could have been there. We have found on Mars a large number of geothermal and hydrothermal systems, lakes, valley networks of different temperatures, ancient oceans, as well as water in outflow channels and gullies, Martian wet environment with longer residence times of liquid water, long enough time for the life to develop. So, as I said, various missions to the Mars have given us a hope that even if there is no life like our life, intelligent life on the Mars now, but there may be micro life, and there may be a life in the past of the history of Mars. Similarly, the habitable world, as I indicated, that this Europa in the Jupiter, which is a moon. The moon has also another, the Jupiter has also another moon here, but this Europa is likely to have a life. The habitability index in this is very high. Recently, just about a month back, a paper was published in the Nature's Astronomy, which has actually mapped the moon of Saturn called Titan. And they have really did a geological survey of the moon of the Saturn named Titan. And as you can see that there are active methane-based hydrological cycles. There are complex geological landscape making its surface geologically diverse. Different materials, temperatures, gravity fields, and many of these surface features are similar and products of the same geological process that we see on Earth. This paper has mapped the major geological units on the Titan's surface. It has dunes and lakes are relatively young. It has a hummocky or mountainous terrains are the oldest on Titan. The dunes at the equator, and plains at the mid-latitude, and labyrinths of terrains and lakes at the poles. So as you can see that there is a definite pattern which indicates that the geological properties of the Titan surfaces are very strongly suggestive of a life being either present or it could have evolved in the past. Now, beyond our own solar system, as I mentioned earlier, about 25 years back, people reported that outside our solar system, there is one planet which circles around its own sun, not our sun, but outside our solar system. That was reported about 25 years back. Today, we call them exoplanets. We have more than 4,000 exoplanets, that is outside our solar system, which have been detected and characterized in many ways. Out of this 4,000, 3,500 approximately, they have orbits which may not be habitable zone. So no orbit in the habitable zone. There are 129 the planets with all of its orbit in the habitable zone. There are 300 planets with part of their orbit in the habitable zone, and the planets with most of the orbit in the habitable zone, about 192. And out of that, about 24 of them have a rocky terrain. So our search so far has told us that out of about 4,000 planets, exoplanets outside our solar system, this 24 or maybe this 192 or maybe some of these might have a living system present on it. I think it was very appropriate that this year's Nobel Prize in Physics went to 3 people who contributed to the search for exoplanets. And the one, Dr. James Pebbles, he had work for theoretical discoveries in physical cosmology. And the other 2 gentlemen for the discovery of an exoplanet orbiting a solar type star. And that particular planet was 51 Pegasi, called. The star is called the Pegasi, and there is a planet circling around it. So it is very, it gives us a hope that this field is getting attention, and people who have contributed in this line of search and research are recognized for this contribution. Another paper, just September of this year, just 2-3 months back, in Nature Astronomy. This was the first planet beyond the solar system confirmed to have water. So these scientists from University College of London, they found enormous amount of water vapors in the atmosphere of a habitable zone of an Earth-like planet called K218b. That's the number given to this particular planet. And they have reported enormous amount of water since its discovery by astronomers in 2015. The exoplanet K218b has elicited much excitement, swirling around a red dwarf star around 110 light years away from Earth, conditions that could allow liquid water to flow Hubble Space Telescope suggested that this particular planet has an atmosphere containing large amount of water vapor. So K218b looks like it could be a rocky planet twice as big as Earth, perhaps covered in a vast ice-covered oceans. So putting it all this thing together, the Nobel Prize announcement came in October, this came in September, and all of these things gives us a hope that we may not be alone in the universe. Earth so far is the only place with life. We have learned about how life originated, how life developed and evolved on this earth. And within our solar system, the likely candidates to have life is Mars, Europa, that is Jupiter's moon, and Titan, that is Saturn's moon. We have to be aware and continuously keep in mind that alternate chemistry of life, like silica base, or there may be other possible elements which could have supported life elsewhere in place of carbon on the life on Earth. Extremophiles provides us clues that it need not be the comfortable conditions that human beings live in today. There are organisms, other living organisms, which have nicely adopted and exploited the extreme habitats on the earth. And similar organisms could have developed or might be evolved in other planets. So when we look for life elsewhere, we need not be biased by looking for life which is our own carbon base, could be silica based, and could have many extreme adaptations that we generally may not be think of. Our current knowledge says that 4,000 plus planets known outside our solar system. And recently, a large amount of water vapor is reported in the atmosphere of the habitable planet called K218b. Life elsewhere is possible, provided we know how to look for, although we have not detected it yet, and search for life elsewhere continues. Let us hope that we are not alone. We might have our cousins somewhere, and we may be waiting for a signal from us, and hopefully we will find them sometime. I want to bring to your notice a remarkable resource that this particular compilation, it has all the missions sent in last 25 years beyond Earth. And year-wise and mission-wise, it chronicles everything about those particular missions. And those who are interested may want to have a look at this one. Finally, I am very thankful to Space Education and Research Foundation of Ahmedabad for giving me this opportunity to prepare for and to present this particular webinar on very fascinating topic of space biology, particularly life elsewhere in the universe. Matters and pictures in this presentation have been taken from various books, journals, etc. And I'm grateful to the authors and contributors of this source materials. And also I'm thankful to friends and colleagues for stimulating discussion. I will end with this slide, quotations from Mahatma Gandhi that recall the face of the poorest and the weakest man you have seen, and ask yourself if the step you contemplate is going to be any use of this. And that is how we need to view everything including the science and the space. We all should be thankful that this beautiful earth, and we are so fortunate to have been living here on this beautiful earth, as well as at a very opportune time when we know the maximum about ourselves and our universe. So myself and you, we all are thankful to this earth, and I am thankful to all of you for attending this webinar.